My name is Joakim Janjatovic, and I'll tell you something about OpenStreetMap. So for the beginning, I'd like to know how many of you have heard about it. Okay. And how many have used it? Okay. So I'll skip this part and I'll quickly just run through it. So it's open, free, world map. It's licensed under Open Database license, and everyone is allowed to do anything with it as long as you respect the community and put a sign at the bottom of your display or the picture that displays the data from this community. It should say that copyright belongs to OpenStreetMap contributors. Why would anyone use OpenStreetMap? Because of legal or technical restrictions or the lack of them. Because any organization, any government, anyone can use it without paying any licenses, without renewing them or having to respect any other clauses that follow the licenses. Second reason, or it should actually be the first one, is that it's crowdsourced. So it's always up to date and it doesn't rely on a few individuals to keep the database running. Some real world examples, I'll give you some, and I'd like to ask you if you have seen them, like not on phones or tablets or any kind of devices, but on public buildings or railway stations. Has anyone seen that? Yeah. And where do you come from?
I'm from Hamburg in Germany, and the bus company uses it for the maps when you get on the bus or you step out of the bus, and there's a small map at the station to show you where you are. This is from OpenStreetMap data.
So this is one example. I would say that this is actually the future of maps. The part when the era when some individual used to draw the maps themselves and display those maps or copy them individually, that's behind us, and we are moving into this new world of open data. So this is one example. I think it's a railway station because it has a small sign over here that says Deutsche Bahn. So they use it in public buildings because why would they pay a license for something they can use for free? And they have many railway stations, many bus stations, and it would be, let's say, ridiculous to pay that large amount of money for something that is not better than this. This is the second example of a commercial on some tram. I'm not sure where is this, but this tram goes to Victoria Park, somewhere in the world. The point is that this car dealership is promoting themselves and saying, you can buy this car over here, and they're presenting it on a map that comes from OpenStreetMap database. So this is Novi Sad from March this year, when I held the previous presentation. So you can see it's pretty detailed from this point of view. And here you can see it from September or yesterday. You can see that the grass is grown. It used to be gray and now it's green. And this road over here is also green. I don't know exactly. Oh, I do. They updated the data, so that road is actually the motorway, and it has some different restrictions than normal roads in the city. So someone, in the meantime, fixed the data on the map, and now it's available for anyone to see. This one?
Yeah, I googled 503 Victoria Park. It's Canada.
Okay, Canada. Berlin?
Yes.
Yeah. So this is the city center of Novi Sad. You can see it's pretty detailed. Not just the city center, the whole city has data for house numbers and many local shops and any kind of interesting places to be mapped. The difference with the current version is that these signs, for example, for bookstores are different. They've updated the version of software they use on servers to display maps. And many other things, like minor things, have improved, which means that the system is constantly improving. It doesn't rely on some single person to keep track of everything. It's community-based. So this is now. This is a different kind of layer that you can see. It has these lines that represent height of terrain. Here it says 150, and here it says 100. And there are 4 lines in between. So with that, you can conclude what's the difference in height of terrain, and it's good for cyclists because they know when they're going uphill or downhill, so they can plan their routes. I forgot to explain the parts of it. I guess you'll know that. The parts of interface, this current web one. You see is the search bar and the part for routing directions. It wasn't there all the time. It's a new feature. You can edit the map. You can view the previous edits in time. You can export the vector data. You can see GPS traces of people who uploaded their trips online, so you can see where they went. And later in the editing part, you can trace those GPS trips and draw maps on top of them. You can, for example, go to the help area and get some beginner's info on how to start contributing or using the data. You can see several different layers. You have the map key. You have the share button to export the picture or get a link to this particular view. And you can embed it as HTML in a website. Here you can see the map notes. If you tick this, you'll see the notes that other people have left on the map, and you don't have to be logged in order to leave the notes here. This is an experimental map. It's called F4 map. I guess you can recognize this place. We're here currently. Maybe it doesn't look like this museum, but it actually is. And this screenshot was taken yesterday. And you can see these white lines on top of it, and you can see that it's dark. So it represents the current weather and time of day on top of the map. So yesterday night when I was preparing this, it was raining. So these white lines were actually going down. So it represented what's the weather like at the place. For example, if I went to New York, then I would see what's the weather like in New York. This is a map of Berlin Zoo. It's often given as an example of how detailed a map could be. So you can plan the trip with your kids, or I don't know, if you want to go to the zoo. And I intentionally left out one part. Can anyone see what is it? Yes, the part in the bottom right corner that says where the data comes from should not be omitted. So this is example of wrong practice. So for beginners, I'm not sure how many of those are here, but let's just say that you have to gather data, upload it, edit it somehow, and then render the maps from that data. And OpenStreetMap is not just this web interface, it's the database that contains vector data. It can be exported by anyone, it's free, and it can be used in many different applications. And you don't have to display the roads the way they are displayed here. You can imagine your own way to display them. So here are a few links for wiki pages, forum. This osm.lugans.org is a poorly designed website, but it contains a few useful links for Serbian community. And learnosm.org contains like instructions on how to begin with. These are a few agreements made by Serbian community. This tag name SR is obligatory. It's filled in Serbian Cyrillic. The other key is -Latin, which is made to make it easy for other developers and people who use the maps not to have to transliterate each time they load a map, so they can just load both scripts and display them at the same time without thinking about grammar or exceptions or any other things. While you are editing maps, you can use this Serbian transliterator, which is a plugin for JOSM. Its best way to use it is to enter the name in Cyrillic and then transliterate it to Latin, because there are no exceptions that way. And if you do it in reverse, you might get some exceptions that are not already programmed into this transliterator. So you would have to be a local to speak Serbian in order to have the right name in the database. These are just ways to display roads, and we have highways, motorways, and other roads that are named, like in Serbian, Državni put prvog B reda, which is, I translate it as order, but it's just a free translation. These are marks. I'm not sure if they are displayed on actual roads or just used in government papers to be sure which road they are talking about. So are there any questions about this part? Because I'll show a few apps from the phone and how they use this data. No? Okay. So here it is. I'll start by an application that I used a few months ago, and I liked it because it was it worked, it did the job. So it's translated into Serbian, and maybe I should switch it to English for this presentation. It has a separate settings for the language of the map and for the language of the application. So I'm switching application language to English. So if you check the map, you will have, for example, something like this. Is this full screen? Yeah. So you can zoom in, you can view the vector data that is rendered inside the application. So I don't know why, but they chose not to represent grass, probably because it's just hard on the CPU and doesn't carry much data. So if you zoom in, you'll see house numbers and other interesting locations that you can see in any other map application. For example, Google Maps, only difference is that the whole map is inside this phone. It's offline. And you preload the map once, and that's it. And because this is community, crowdsourced data, once in a while you'll get offered with an update for the whole map. So you update the whole country, for example, once a month, and you always have the most up-to-date maps, which are continually drawn in by volunteers from around the world.
How large is the file for Serbia?
It depends on the application. They are compiling the file themselves. So they export the map data to some kind of their server, and then they process it for their application. I can check it inside the app. So. Okay, so you would go to no, these are sounds. So Europe, and if you go to Serbia, it's 13 megabytes. So it's pretty compiled. It's pretty dense, but on the contrary, if you go to Germany, you will see that it's 800 megabytes, and they suggest you download files individually. For example, parts of the country, because it's too large and too detailed for one download. So this is the way they designed it. They have routing, so you can use it as a navigation device instead of this dedicated device in your car. You can have simulation of navigation, so you can see where you're going to go without actually going there. You can set start and destination locations. So this is one application. I will show you, since we're online, I'll show you another one for this. This one is particularly for Belgrade because it contains proprietary data, but it's overlaid on top of OpenStreetMap data. So this is just another way to use it. So you can see it has a bit nicer interface. And this one contains all the house numbers in Belgrade. For example, the real OpenStreetMap database doesn't have these. So they bought the license to use the house numbers, and they integrate it in the app without contributing back to OpenStreetMap database. So if you go to Belgrade, you should use this one, and the other ones don't contain all the data. Sorry? It's named InfoGrad. They have a website, infograd.rs. This is just application for accessing that data. And it doesn't store offline. You have to be online to use this. So here is one application, OSM, and it's an open source application, and it allows for all kinds of editing, and you can actually compile and export your own map and import it in this application. So it doesn't have to be downloaded through this app. You can do any map. You can imagine your own map, draw it, and then insert it into this application. So we are here. You can see that it displays all the data you can have. They have also the routing for cars, pedestrians, bicycles. It just changed to night mode. I guess automatically because of the driving. So they have a lot of add-ons, for example, contour lines and a bunch of other things that can be developed by other programmers because it's open sourced. So if I go to the mountain part, you can see the shading that represents the mountain. And that shading is not part of OpenStreetMap, it's another database, but all the data is crossed, so you get this much better map. And the last step that displays maps is the one I used a month ago, and I think it's the best user experience so far because it just works. It's the most, how do you call it, Fluent app. It just flows. There is no lag in rendering maps. It just flies. They have also options to download their own maps, and this one has a bit, how do you say, not so many settings available, because you can just set a few things, like you can choose, do you want to have zoom buttons, or you can pinch to zoom, and you can set measurement units. You can choose where to store the maps. I think all of these apps have something like this. And what's interesting about it and other apps, that they can use the map language and they can choose it. So this map has names entered both in Cyrillic and Latin script, and they can show it if they want to. So this phone is set to use English language as the default. So the app recognizes it and says, okay, you probably don't know how to read Cyrillic, but we'll display it side by side so that you can compare it if you see a plate on some building, so you can find your way quickly. If, for example, your phone is in, I don't know, German language, if there are street names in German, they will do it in German, or in any other language that the data is available in. So this app doesn't allow you to switch it manually, but others do. So it's a choice of the programmers that make the app.
Does this one work online and offline?
This one is currently offline. I think they can render it online. I'll just check the size of the map. Is it here? Download maps. downloaded. Serbia here is 41 megabytes, so it's 4 times larger than the other one. It just depends on the format the programmers chose to use. For example, Italy is about 500 megabytes or even more. So it's a bit complicated to download it in one chunk. So you can see sizes of different countries. And the problem with this app that I had was if you want to update the map, they download the whole map and then delete the old data. So if the map data is 600 megabytes for a certain country, you have to have 1200 megabytes available for, like, you have to have twice the data. And only then is the previous data deleted. But you can hack it. You can first delete the data and then download the new one. So it works that way too. The interesting thing with the maps is that you can, for example, mark a place. It displays information. You can tap on it, see the coordinates in different ways, in different standards. You can choose to go to have routing options. You can bookmark it. You can add notes for it. You can change the color, for example. And it's the simplest app I have used with OpenStreetMap. So it's my recommendation for anyone having Android device. And I think this one is also available for iPhones. I'm not sure which app is available for Windows devices because I haven't used them. Here's one app that is supposed to help contributors, but it works only with GPS signal. It's made for the people who are entering house numbers. So you're walking on the street, you turn it on, and you just say this number, that number, and it automatically saves the location. So it makes putting house numbers on the map much easier. And here's an example of how other services can benefit from OpenStreetMap. The service is called Mapillary, and I've tried it on the way here, but it didn't work as well as it should because of the weather and the bad GPS reception. So if I go to review, it will say I have several photos available that I've taken while driving here. So you can see the pictures and say they are okay. So I'm clicking this OK sign, approving the pictures that they can be uploaded to the server. And you probably heard of Google Street View. So this is crowdsourced version of it. When it gets uploaded to the server, they process the images. They smudge the number plates on cars. They smudge faces from walkers, from passers-by. And then they make it available for public to use and to view. So maybe I'll be able to open the part where they... So this is how you take pictures. It says GPS is not available. So here you are. And I think it has options for walking. So it allows you to have smaller distance between pictures and to just walk on the street and take pictures of the city and then upload it to the server. and view it just like the Google Street View does. So you have the explore part. It works in browser. So we'll try. It's not too quick. Do you have any questions on this while it's loading? It might work in a minute or two. So these blue lines represent parts where they have the data, where someone actually took pictures. So if you zoom in and choose a part of it, you can see what other people have taken pictures of, where they traveled. So it's all there. It's kind of slow now, but if you have many pictures from different angles, they combine all the pictures in one 3D image. So you kind of get the impression that you're in a sphere of pictures around you. So this is an example of how other services, other businesses can benefit from OpenStreetMap data, because these maps in the background that you see are OpenStreetMap. So if they wanted to display these pictures on any other map, they would have to pay for the license. And this way they can have a cheap startup business. So if you have any other ideas how to use the OpenStreetMap data, please say yes now, or keep it for yourself and earn money from it. So that's it from these apps. If you know any other app that you would like me to review, here, say it, or questions, or anything else. Yes?
They are working with OpenStreetMap to use actually streets from OpenStreetMap for driving a car.
Yes, we had a similar idea, but it was a bit complicated for us to start from the beginning. Yeah.
There are several steps you need to do to make a part of the OpenStreetMap into a SuperTux card, but it can be done.
So
I don't know. I think it's very interesting.
it's a great idea. For example, you could drive that cart in any city, in Novi Sad, for example, browse your own streets, maybe learn something new about your city.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. Thanks. Anyone else? So that's it. Thank you very much.